So I say, hey guys, it's Claus. Welcome back to another episode. Look at this. Look at this funny looking thing. It's the Mutant. It's that American preferential matchmaking premium, the M6A2E1, driven by Max83ZA. Shout out to you, buddy, for sending this in. And he's got 2 marks on his barrel, which is a pretty good indication that this guy is a good player. 2 marks on his barrel means he's statistically better than 85% of the player base as far as getting damage and damage assist. His average over the last 100 games when he got that second mark. And I think that is a much better indicator than, say, the WN8 that a lot of people are obsessed with. And I have to mention this. I've mentioned it a few times in past videos, but I'm so sick of these WN8 chasing stat patterns. And the difference is WN8 is basically only, it's completely proportional to the damage you do. And it has nothing to do with damage assist. Damage assist does not go into the WN8 calculation. So I think a player that has 3 stripes on his barrel, someone who's been able to mark his gun with 3 marks, like some of the, you see some streamers or some really good players that are 3 marking all their tanks, those guys are way better players, in my opinion, than these WN8 obsessed stat padding pricks that are only interested in getting that W8 number up and are only interested in doing damage for themselves and forego a lot of damage assist, which is, you know, spotting or helping the team win. You'll see a lot of these guys with really high WN8 numbers with not very good win rates, and you know, they don't have 3 marks. They maybe have 1 or 2 marks on their tanks. And that's my 2 bits. So Max, way to go, buddy. He's doing really well in this Mutant. And the second thing I want to mention before we get into the action here, as he's already bounced 1,000 off this thing, 1,000 damage. I played 1 game in the Mutant. I was gifted a Mutant by one of you guys. I really appreciate all the gifts you guys give me, but I played it once and my reaction was, yeah, mutate this. It sucked. It was horrible. But that was before it was buffed. And all the preferential matchmaking premiums have been buffed. Basically, I don't want to go through all the numbers, but in all ways, they've been slightly buffed in every category. Their performance has just slightly been improved for 2 reasons. One, power creep. They've just, they're just underwhelming in every way. And secondly, they get very poor matchmaking, but Wargaming says they're going to try and fix that as well. So, in the spirit of no bullshit, we pride ourselves in being the no bullshit channel. When there is a when there is a job well done, we shout out the job well done. And I got to say, Wargaming, shout out to you guys for abandoning the idea of removing preferential matchmaking on all these legacy tanks and just buffing them so that they're more competitive. And I've waited a long time to say this because I wanted to see how they performed, and it's been a while now, and I've got a lot of replays from you guys, and the overwhelming feedback from owners of the Mutant and the IS-6 and the KV-5 and all of the old legacy preferential matchmaking tanks that some of the veteran players, the guys that started this game right out of the gate, that have been loyal followers and players for many years, they're the guys that bought these tanks. The overwhelming response I see from all of them is that they're very happy with their preferential matchmaking tanks. So now they can roll out in their preferential matchmaking tanks and not feel like complete, total, utter, useless turds. They are, and it's amazing. Almost all of them had a slight increase in penetration, which was just necessary to bring them not even competitive, like still well below the other tier 8s, okay? But at least that compensated for the power creep. And then all this other slight little buffs that they received in traverse and speed and, a slight increase in accuracy during turret rotate and all the little stats that a lot of people don't even follow. And I gotta tell you, the slight increases, the slight buffs that are so subtle on paper are very similar to the amount of buff you would get of, say, if you're running your tank with an 80% crew, with Brothers in Arms, Snapshot, Smooth Ride, running, food, right? You add all of those crew skills together. And so what you had in the past were a lot of the really good players that had played a lot of games and that had really good crews could roll out in these tanks and say, well, I can do well in it. And that's because with all the skills their crews had built up, you add up Brothers in Arms, the food, the smooth ride, the snapshot, all of those things together would increase this crew skill by 25, 30, 35%, depending on how they, what skills the crews had. And that was enough to make the tank, they could make it work. But if you were just a regular schmo, starting the game, you wanted to buy a tank, and your first premium tank, and you buy the IS-6, and you put an 80% crew in there with no skills, so your crew is 25, 30, 40% worse than a player that's been playing a long time. You roll out in that tank, and it was just horrible. So now, the buffs have now brought these tanks up to a level where if you buy one and you roll out in it, and I would recommend not putting an 80% crew in any of these. I would recommend, if you play American heavy tanks, and you like the American heavy tanks, and you've got a couple of them, and you've got some decent crews. You don't have to be a Unicom with a 6-skill crew. Just a guy that's playing that maybe has a tier 8, a tier 9 American heavy tank, and you've got a crew with 1 full skill, maybe working on their second. And you want something that can make credits and be fun. Now these are a legitimate option, because if you put a decent, 100% crew in here with a full skill, hopefully your first skill is Brothers in Arms, then you have a tank that's been buffed. It's already not shit, and it's a little bit better because you have a good crew in it. And the penetrations on all of them have been buffed. The armor on some of them. Basically, the aspect of the tank that made it gave it its personality was slightly buffed. So they maintained their gameplay style. Like this thing was supposed to be a hull-down beast with really good armor, and they've buffed the armor slightly so that actually means something now. Because before the buff, that statement was only true like 3 or 4 years ago when it came out, and now it was shit. But with the buff now, you can get in games, and your characteristics actually mean something. So that was a long-winded kind of explanation. Basically, what I'm saying is the preferential premiums now are playable, and that's only the first step. I'm reserving judgment now on matchmaking until Wargaming rolls out. They have mentioned that the second phase is going to be adjusting the matchmaking and maybe not allowing these tanks, or any tanks, to be bottom tier over and over and over again. Some sort of system where the matchmaker remembers, if you've played this thing and you're bottom tier 1 or 2 or 3 times, then it somehow knows that, and the next game you'll get put into a different, where you're top tier or mid tier or something. So it's more evenly. Your top tier, middle tier, bottom tier is more evenly, what's the word? It's more evenly done. I'm reserving judgment until that happens. But old Max here sent this in. He watched my mutant video where I said, mutate, this thing was so horrible pre-buff. I couldn't do any. Played one game, it wouldn't even move. It was like I thought my keyboard wasn't connected. Like I was pressing the buttons to turn and back up, and the fucking thing didn't, almost like it didn't react. But it's so much better now, and he is, look at him go here. Now he's going to charge in. He's going, he's taking a shot. Yeah, he's charging in. You're not invincible. You're still not invincible. But look at the damage blocked by armor on this thing so far. And as long as you keep your front pointed at the enemy now, you look at that. Let's check the stats here. Way to go, Max. So equal time. I thought the mutant sucked, and it did before the buff, but I'm not saying you're going to have games like this all the time, guys. Look at that, almost 6,000 damage on top. But, I mean, he blocked 6,000 damage. You can still easily be circled. You still, from the side and the rear, are completely weak, and you're not that fast. But at least now, the main characteristic of this thing, which is the frontal armor, actually means something. So Mutant, yeah, it's playable now, and he made a shit ton of credits. If you guys got other replays in your preferential matchmaking tanks that have been gathering dust in your garage now that you think are okay, send them to me, and let's feature a couple of them. But thanks, Max, for sending me that replay. Way to go, buddy. Great game.